This is a Southland Tribune sporting podcast, and it's the brainchild of Logan Savoury, which basically means that, Sav, you're going to have to actually now tell us what's happening here. My name's Nick Jeffrey. Nathan Burden is with us as well. The band is back together. We normally do this through the footy season, but we've kind of evolved what was the Roaring Pen podcast, the Southland Stags podcast, and we've decided there's enough good sport around to look at doing this on a semi-weekly basis. Is that the plan?
Well, I think so. I think in sitcom terms, it's a spin-off, isn't it? Yes. Something like that from the Roaring Pen.
Generally, the spin-offs aren't as good as the original, though. That's the problem.
It's the podcast no one asked for, but you've got it anyway.
I miss talking to you guys each week, and maybe potentially just talking to you guys. I don't know how many other people are out there, but there is some pretty cool sporting stories out there. So let's hope that we can uncover a few of those.
To be fair, we finished when was this? When did the footy season finish? The Stag season, the Roaring Pen finished in about October sometime, was it? Yeah. So we finished. Then I remember walking downstairs after leaving the studio going, I tell you what we should do is put a sporting podcast together. So, look, it's only taken us 5 months to actually get round to doing it.
We had a good off-season.
We had an off-season.
Yeah. It has been a good off-season.
We had a good off-season. It feels like now we're primed and ready to go.
But short story is, we've broadened things out and thought to ourselves, well, listen, there's so many, as you say, Sav, good stories going on, and it's a good time of year. I mean, we've got the Sharks basketball, the Steel netball, club footy starting up as well. We thought, well, why not get into this and do something every week and have a feature interview, and we've got a good one to start with, and see what comes out.
Absolutely, and I guess through the podcast you can sort of dig a wee bit deeper with some of these yarns with people, and obviously what we're coming up with the first one with Cormac Buchanan is a brilliant example of that.
Yeah, I think the Staglanders have made a good start to the season too, haven't they?
They have actually. Basically the takeover has commenced.
Yeah.
Ethan de Groot 1 from 1.
Yep.
A reasonably fortunate 1 from 1, but they got the win. Why don't we ride the crest of that wave?
And by all accounts, a former Stag and Kenny Lynn's playing a big role up there in his arrival at the Highlanders. So we'll claim that one as well.
You're doing a very good job, I must admit, on the Tribune of doing a very parochial weekly wrap-up of Southland Club Rugby, or Super Rugby at least. It could be Southland Club Rugby almost.
Yeah, it's quite biased. But,
it's a little biased.
Yeah, I was just trying to look for a point of difference.
Yeah. Actually, they're good. It's a really good endorsement, though, in Big Ethan, wasn't it?
I must admit I was quite surprised with that.
Likewise.
That was nothing against Ethan, but he's probably does his actions with is leading with his actions rather than words. But maybe that's what they wanted out of him. So and 1 from 1, as you said, maybe a little fortunate, but we'll take it.
My oath. So here we are, of course, leading in, and it's the most favourite time of the year, or one of them, Nath, isn't it? Sharks and Steel season about to get going, so there'll be plenty of good sport to get into weekly.
Yeah, absolutely. I was reading Logan's story about the Americans coming into town for Sharks today, and I was just thinking these guys have arrived from Houston, I think it was. Houston to Invercargill, and then from Invercargill we shipped them straight off to Greymouth.
Yes. So we're away for a pre-season week, actually, which is great. So they've brought this blitz, the West Side Blitz, they're calling it, where 9 of the 11 NBL teams are going and playing over 4 days, which is great, and fantastic to get the group away, obviously, pre-season, and play some games, so that's fantastic as well. I must admit, having personally picked the guys up from the airport and driven them, to North Invercargill to where they're going to be domiciled, actually, it was a little bit of an eye-opener. The boys had come out of various southern locations in the US, and as we probably take it for granted, it was quite busy. There was quite a bit of traffic, actually, on the roads, to be honest, but you don't see people. Right, you think about it. You're driving down North Road, you don't see anybody. Everyone's in cars. No one's actually walking around. So they were wondering whether there was actually anyone living in Invercargill. And the quote of the year so far was one of the Americans, LeGerald Vick, in the back seat going, "We're not in Miami now."
No, they certainly aren't.
Yeah, Greymouth will be another interesting introduction to New Zealand life for them. But no, it should be a good week, actually.
And you've got the inside oil, because I also note that one of the other guys is like the second tallest shark we've had. He's the same size as Alex Pledger. And having seen Chief sort of wandering around the stadium in recent years and seeing just what a big human he is, I mean, the team must be lining up pretty well, is it?
Yeah, feel good about it. I mean, the thing is, when you put a group together, probably said that for the last couple of years too, and it hasn't really played out as you might have liked from a wins and losses point of view. But you don't really know until you bring the guys together about how they're actually going to gel. But Coach Guy obviously rolled in on Friday night, which was awesome. So they got straight to work over the weekend. And like, best thing is you can get away for 4 or 5 days up to Greymouth, get the group together and get going. But yeah, mate, if it does, there's good signs. I think Callum McRae, who you're talking about, who's Palmerston North boy, he's back from 5 years playing in the States, came back and played the back half of last year's NBL for the Nelson Giants. And he scored 27 on us. It's always a good way to recruit him the next year when the bloke plays really well against you. So he scored 27 and about 15 rebounds against us. But he played really well for Nelson. And to be honest, New Zealand big men are really hard to find. And so we had to work pretty hard to get him. But I think he's got the potential to be one of the comers this year. We'd like to think that. I think. Want to make a good start, I reckon. That's key. We get the Sharks start on the road up against the Targo, so that won't be easy. But a lot of their guys are Perth-based who are going quite deep into the Aussie NBL season that's still being played now. So we'd like to think we might get might be a bit more together, and then we got Manawatu in the first home game on the 4th or 3rd of April, which is a Wednesday night in Invercargill too. So if you can get away to a good start, that's
Well, it's bizarre, isn't it? I popped down to the stadium the other day to see the team training, and it was basically outside of probably Braden, the whole team there. And I recall in past seasons where guys have flown in the day of the first game just because of the overlap of seasons. To have that full squad, basically the full squad here, has to be a huge help, you'd think, leading into trying to get that decent start.
Yeah, and really interesting. Scott Telfer, who of course has got Invercargill connections, so he's an Invercargill-born boy. It's Sid Cummings' nephew, actually. So we've signed him. He's played for Taranaki for the last couple of 3 years as well too. So he literally in the huddle over the weekend said first time that we've ever this far out had a group together in teams that we've been involved in. So yeah, it's a good sign. As I say, you've got to have the talent, and there's some pretty talented rosters that have been put together. So you want to have a real connected group. And you can already tell that, Coach Guy even knows us, knows what he wants to do. You can see that he's rolling that out from day one from the weekend. So, yeah, feels good.
We haven't talked about this before, but I did read a pretty controversial column by Justin Nelson where he was sort of suggesting that Sharks teams of the last couple of years just haven't been prepared to really do it for the singlet and sort of empty the tank. Is that fair? Or?
I think there's a bit in that. Yeah, I do. I think one of the hard things from particularly in the basketball game, it is kind of a year-by-year proposition. You do have your core group of players, and we've got a really good core group that you have to call on a year-to-year basis, but you bring in those, you'd have to say, key pieces that kind of are the difference makers, particularly with the import players. You're bringing them in, on a year-to-year basis. Sometimes you get those right, sometimes you don't get those right, and sometimes you get players who are using it as a tick of the box, and then they move on to the next one and bank another paycheck without being too harsh. It's a professional game for them. I think the thing, I remember Judd Flavel always said this a few years ago. He said, what you want to do is you want to get players at the right time of their careers. And I think it's one of the good things that I know just how much work guys put into recruiting this year. And a couple of those players, LeGerald Vick is an out-and-out talent. Don't think there's too much doubt about that. So if you wrote that story in the Southland Tribune, that they're not afraid his fellow Americans to talk him up in terms of from a playing point of view. So that's exciting. And he can put on a show. There's no doubt. We saw him. He walked off the plane and was going full noise actually out on the court. So that's exciting. But particularly in Markel Lotz and Josh Turner, who are other two Americans, they have points to prove. They are really fired up to use this as kind of a stepping stone to the next start of their careers. So yeah, that's I think the little maybe piece of the missing ingredient that you want to get guys that are prepared to really work hard, and when there's a bit of adversity around, really dig deep. Because there will be. It's a long season. It's a very even competition now, right? So there's going to be patches where things aren't going your way. So it is about how you get guys of the right character, which is easy to say, harder to recruit. But that's kind of been one of the real key focuses. Because I think, to be fair to Justin Nelson, he's got a point.
You'll get an idea about resilience once you get some of these big levers in a little plane on the way to Greymouth. I'd imagine it's a good early test.
Well, actually, it's a flight to Christchurch and then a lovely 3-hour drive across the Alps.
Oh, right.
Yeah, bus trip.
in a minibus that'll have the old knees up around the ears. So that should be good fun anyway. So yeah, that'll be one that we'll be able to pick up next week on the Raw. We'll see how the West Side Blitz goes for the Sharks. We can touch on Steel as well too. So they're obviously got the group together and have been going to work. I guess the real question that's hanging around that squad.
Yes.
Isn't it going to be? I think we all know where this is going.
Yeah.
George Fisher.
Yeah.
Will she? Won't she? getting some mixed reports about where she's at. What are you hearing?
Well, I did see the release when Jen O'Connell was announced in the media release from the Steel about coming back, and sort of naturally down a wee bit. It was a bit about George Fisher, and I thought, this might be more of the story just at the moment, because, I mean, let's be honest, it's such an integral part of that team, and yeah, it doesn't sound like that knee injury's too great.
Yeah, she's it's an open book, really. I think one of the hard things, by the sounds of it, the Steel, until they get her here and can get an idea about what's going on, it's very hard to make some judgments about what role she may or may not play for the season ahead. I do know, obviously, we're reasonably connected because partner Braden's obviously from a Sharks point of view, so there's a nice wee in there. I know she's really focused, even just for her own mental well-being and focus to actually getting back out on court. Wants it hard, has been working so hard, just hasn't, I don't know whether it's just been responding as well as anyone would have hoped, and through no fault of anyone's, medically or obviously the player herself. And
obviously it was working so well because she qualified, didn't she, as as she wouldn't have been an import in the
Correct.
side, so they could bring in a defender.
Yep.
And so everything was sort of working quite well in that sort of space.
Yeah,
yes.
Look, Jen O'Connell's is a great story on the other side of that coin too. I think
totally.
she'd be great to get into the studio at some stage during the season. The other big move, I think, Kate Heffernan being named captain of the team is excited about. I think it's a great call, and excited to see, I guess, how that leadership sort of mantle sits with her as well.
Yeah, good stuff. So all of that gets going over the course of the next month, along with club footy, as we say as well too. I suppose the other interesting piece on a local front, the Stags draw's been released. Boy, what a start to the bumper start to the season!
Because they know how to get the old Stags fans fizzed up early in the season.
Well played.
Finally, we've been on the rough end of the pineapple when it comes to the draw.
Yeah, true. Yeah, I mean, it just makes absolute sense. You have a Stag Day, the old Southland Otago battle on a Saturday afternoon, and that has happened this season. It's also happened in round 1, August 10. So, but if that's not enough, you get 7 days later, there's a shot at the Ranfurly Shield against Hawke's Bay. So.
The good thing is, a fortnight into the competition, it's either going to be just unbelievable or we're
either going to be
put the shutters up and get out of there.
Battling in the studio or just overcome with excitement. We'll know after 2 weeks.
Hey, now put your Active Southland hat on too, and this is probably quite a good segue into our guest, who of course is Cormac Buchanan, which we'll get to in just a moment or two. But Southland Sports Awards. The ILT Southland Sports Awards are coming up again. In fact, you're about to open nominations reflecting on the past 12 months. Yeah,
100%. And Cormac's obviously featured heavily in those awards over the last couple of years, picking up a couple of Junior Sportsperson of the Year gongs. And yeah, we'll be opening those nominations on Monday next week, and they run from. I think I've got this right, from April 1 last year through to the end of March this year. So some of these achievements that are coming through at the moment will be front of mind. But I've had a look back over the last 12 months and had a look at some of Logan's stories as well. And we've had a pretty good last 12 months. There have been some outstanding achievements across a really broad range of sports as well. So just as we kicked off at the top, we were talking about some great stories. There's Southlanders have been kicking goals over the last 12 months. So it is going to be a great lot of sports awards, and I'm pleased once again. I'm pleased that I'm not sitting on that judging panel, because that's going to be hard work. Seth?
Yes. If I get invited back, that'd be great. It's sort of great, and then you get into the actual having to make some of those decisions. And I guess the great thing is when it is tough, then we've had a good year, particularly some of the categories. And it's going to be an interesting sports awards this year.
Well, I think our guest is certainly going to feature. I don't want to be too presumptuous about that, but it'd be about unlucky not to at least make a final. Is he still a junior sports person? I suppose he is. What's the junior category?
Yeah, well and truly, yeah. Under 19.
19.
He's got another couple of years.
So this is Cormac Buchanan, of course, and we had a good long chat with him. As now he's somewhere between here and Europe, I think. Actually, he's probably arrived, to be honest, because they flew out on Sunday. He and Mother Kate for another European campaign, a little bit of a different campaign for him this year, which we'll get into as well too. But I guess the thing that struck us, and Sav, it was you and I that had a sit down with him and a chat. The reality is that just trying to comprehend the level of performance and the level that this young fella's operating at, I think it's the hardest thing for us to kind of get their heads around. It's something that I've been thinking a lot about in the last couple of days since we had the chat.
I'm not sure, and I probably wouldn't either if I hadn't followed this through a work sense. But if people comprehend how big this is in terms of not just a Southland lad, but a Kiwi lad doing what he's doing, and I guess hopefully that'll come a bit more of a wider appreciation. But I think it's starting to dawn on people that we've got a Kiwi lad right up there and on the world stage.
Yeah, I think it really came home for me last year. Nick, you were doing the interview with him, and he took us through the garage and the bikes and all that and we walked right through the tent with him, and he took us out into the paddock and said, "This is where the big guys, this is where the MotoGP guys are racing." It was a goosebump moment because it was just like he is within touching distance of this. He's so close to it, and you just got to take your hat off and just hope that he can achieve those dreams. And I'm sure he's got all the ambition and all the talent. So hopefully he can get there.
He wants it too, doesn't he? He's not afraid to. That was the good. That's the nice thing without prejudging. You'll hear, as we chat to him shortly. I mean, he wants it.
Yeah, and he's obviously he's certainly a different 17-year-old than I was as a 17-year-old anyway, in terms of level-headedness.
Yeah. So just give that context and have a think about this. This is a 17-year-old young man who we're about to speak to. So here he is to get us going on the Raw podcast, Cormac Buchanan. Well, pleasure to bring in the freshly crowned New Zealand Supersport 600 champion as part of the New Zealand Superbike Championships. We've got Cormac Buchanan in with us to get the Raw started for this new initiative. Mate, great to have you in. You're going to have to break down the championship for us firstly. So this is the 600 that you stepped up to, or you've won it for 2 years in a row now, right?
Yeah, so last year in 2023 it was my first year racing at 600. So the first 2 years before that, I was on a Supersport 300 bike. So when we say 300, we mean like 300cc.
Yep.
And so obviously going from 300cc to 600 is a big step. And we managed to win it in the last race after being tied on points, which was quite a blockbuster. But yeah, for a first year to win it was pretty cool. And obviously the year I had in Europe in 2023 shaped me into a better rider. So coming back, we knew that the goal would definitely be to defend that. And yeah, it went pretty flawlessly, should we say. 14 out of 18 wins and leading majority of the races, and the only races I didn't finish are the ones I didn't win. So yeah, 100% win-finish rate. So it was a good season for sure.
Yeah, it's awesome, mate. And I do know for you as well, whilst we follow your exploits internationally, coming home and performing in your New Zealand Championships massively important to you, right? Yeah,
exactly. Obviously, coming home is weird to say it because obviously it's quite a high level championship, but it's almost like my off season. So for me, that's crucial to make sure I get the most out of the racing, to make sure I can fine tune and experiment different things. So for me, it's really just testing, but that testing is crucial to understand where I'm at going into the European World Championship season. So even though it's not anywhere near the level of Europe, it's still crucial for me. Yeah.
I guess the beauty of it too is there is a round at Teretonga and you get to race it at home, which is a pretty rare one for considering you're all over the world. Is it how special it is to be able to line up on your home track?
Yeah, it's definitely really special being able to race at home. It's the first time my friends get to see me. Well, the first and only time my friends get to see me race, and it was even more special this year. Having Burnt Monroe as a part of that. And it was also even more special again being able to win that championship at home. So being able to sleep in my own bed for once on a race weekend is pretty good. So it's awesome having it at home.
How it's pretty glamorous when you think about it. He's a 17-year-old kid from Invercargill, jet setting around, mate. So what we're going to do obviously is we'll go back to the start of the story and work our way through it, but. Tell us a little bit about these European campaigns over there. Are they all there caught up to be, or is it a hell of a lot of work?
It's certainly not as glamorous and luxurious as people think.
Yeah.
Firstly, you have to start with the 30-plus hour flight in economy over there. Trust me, plane flights are not as fun as they seem to be, and the movies get very boring after a while. But don't get me wrong, being able to travel around in Europe with my family is incredible. Well, with Dad the last few years. So it's a lot of hard work, as you can imagine. It's not just getting on a bike and riding around. It's, hours upon hours of hard work in the gym or cycling or actually on the bike. It's one of the hardest physical sports in the world, I'd say. And just to even compete in that championship at a level good enough to be anywhere close to the front is pretty difficult. As I found it in my first year, I come from New Zealand doing barely any training, and to be honest with you, it was a rude awakening, and you learn pretty quickly over there, eh?
I mean, I guess not only just the standard of riding you were going on. You were a kid, you were 15 when you first went over to Europe? I mean, going over and you're based in Spain, I think, weren't you? Going over there, obviously leaving your school friends behind at 15 and for someone at any age, that's quite a daunting prospect for a 15-year-old kid from Invercargill to immerse himself in that. How did you find that first year over there at such a young age?
I think the first year was probably the most difficult year. It's obviously new bikes, new tracks, new competition, new competitors and stuff. So it was really just the learning year. And I think probably the hardest thing was the fact that I came from New Zealand where I was winning everything. To go over there and to be last by like 4 seconds was definitely not easy at first. It was pretty disheartening. And in those moments, that's where you really have to work the hardest. You have to, kind of analyse, what are you doing wrong? What can you work on? And there was a lot for me to work on, that's for sure. So that first year was a big learning year, new language, not knowing Spanish. And it's not just that, but also the culture of living, at the racetracks, usually in New Zealand we have dinner around 6 p.m, but over there they have dinner at like 9, so that sort of stuff.
Couldn't handle that.
No, it's horrible. It's like, I'm someone who likes to sleep very early, but actually when I want to go to bed, we haven't even had dinner yet, so that was also something you have to contend with. But also, not just that, but like in New Zealand we'll have a race and it'll be around 10, 12 minutes, but over there races around 40 minutes. And in New Zealand, we're racing in 10-degree weather, whereas over there we're racing in 35-degree weather. Yeah. So it's a big, huge physical step forward, yeah.
It's probably a good segue to the actual, a lot of people probably understand the requirements that you need to do conditioning-wise to get yourself up to that speed. So, I mean, it's just a bit of a snapshot of what you need to do to get yourself in the position to compete at that level.
Yeah, it's one of the more tricky ones to try and figure out for me. Luckily, the last 3 years I've been a part of in Mike Piper Training Centre at Stadium Southland. So I've had Josie McKercher in there. She's been training me really hard.
You even used the married name. That's very good work, mate.
I was trying to remember it. Thankfully,
well done.
I got it. But,
shout out to Josie with the Academy Southland program. She does outstanding work, right?
Yeah, exactly right. Like the first year I went over there, as I said, I did the bare minimum. I wasn't really putting any effort in. And that second year I came home and, she whipped me into shape, that's for sure. There's a lot of conditioning, a lot of, aerobic stuff, also a little bit of weight stuff. But the hardest thing I think for me as well is the weight. You have to be a certain weight. You have to be as light as possible, but also being as strong as possible. So it's a real balance of trying to figure that out. Luckily in the last year or so I've kind of figured out, the routines and stuff. So it means more cardio and conditioning rather than, pure weightlifting. And that all just depends on how tall you are and, what your specific requirements are,
Because I'm interested in that conversation because I guess about the amount of strength you actually need, because obviously it looks good when you're out there, but how much are you actually wrestling with the bike or needing to actually wrestle with the bike to get it into the spot to be at the sharp end of the field like you are?
Yeah, well, it's for reference, say you're going the speed that we're going, around 250k an hour on average, so that's around 70 metres per second, and you have to do that for 40 minutes trying to wrestle a bike, so you have to take into account G-forces, the weather, obviously you need to be able to handle that, the aerobic, endurance, that sort of stuff, arm pump, because you're using every single muscle in your body. And when you're going down the straight, you have to be aerodynamic, almost like a cyclist. Mm-hmm. So you have to be kind of squashed like a bug behind the windscreen. So you have to have good core strength for that. And the way that you push the bike through the corners is with your legs. So you have to have good leg strength. So it's really a full body workout. But you see us road racers, we're almost like cyclists, we're very, skinny. We're not huge, muscly, buff guys. Obviously the further up and the faster and the bigger the bikes get, the more muscle you can put on. But at the moment, being in the lightweight class, as we call it, I have to be, light but very, aerobically fit,
It's interesting because I think about it and I make the Formula One, comparison here, where all they're trying to do is remove weight, and those guys, it's hard to know because they're all suited up. But you don't know they are lean as lean. We talked a little bit. I don't know if you want to go into your playing weight, mate, but you've talked a little bit about trying to manage that as well too. Where do you need to be, and how important is that on a motorbike as well? In terms of managing weight.
Yeah, the weight is obviously probably one of the most important aspects. It's honestly, if you're heavy, you're really already lost before you've even gotten on the bike,
Sav, we're done.
But yeah, it's like, the way that we kind of calculate it is that we have a bike and rider combined weight. So you have to be with the bike, the rider and the bike have to add up to over 150 kg. If you're under that, you're disqualified. So the bike is around, I'd say, about 80, 90 kg. So it doesn't leave you with very much playing room for the rider because you want to be as close to the 150 as possible.
And there's nothing you can take off the bike.
No, exactly right.
Yeah.
Exactly right. I mean, you can try and, take off metal, but your bike's not going to handle very well, So the biggest place that we look at is the rider itself. Around, I think the lightest I had to be was 54. And that was the lightest I ever was. And obviously you have to take into account you've got your leathers, your helmet, your boots, your gloves, your back protector, your airbag. All those things add weight as well. So I think the lightest I was with all my gear, well, it's actually funny. I was 68 before, I think, the Spanish GP. And then we had a second race later on that day, and I weighed myself before I was 68 with all my gear on, and I weighed myself after, and I was 66. And that's just how much weight you lose during a race, just in fluids and sweat. So that's probably one of the hardest things too. Obviously, you get very fatigued, and you have to be hydrated, or else you're just gonna pass out on the bike in those conditions, eh?
You'd have some good convos with some jockeys, I would have thought.
Yeah.
You could share some good stories.
Same sort of thing, right?
Yeah, exactly right. I was, in this, I think it was last year, and I was really struggling, trying to, keep it that weight because it was so difficult at times. And Dad's like, you're just like a jockey. So effectively, you just have to, keep persevering, and it's going to pay off. And yeah, you definitely notice a difference, eh?
So that's the physical side. I mean, tell us a little bit about the mental side of it, right? Because I suppose you've got, even though you're saying you're doing 70 metres a second, which does seem quite quick, you've got a lot of time in your helmet by yourself, right? In those races, and as the races progress, sometimes things inside your control, sometimes outside of your control. Tell us a little bit about the work that you do, and then I guess how you sort of equalise that in the high pressure environment you're in.
Yeah, so it's very good for me being a part of Academy Southland. I have Jason McKenzie on board. He's someone who's helped me a lot. But yeah, the mental side of things is actually more important, I'd say, than the physical side. Of course, you can be physically fit. You could be, the fittest person out there. But mentally, if you're not the strongest, you're just not going to succeed, eh? I mean, to do that, what we do on the bikes, and to do that for 40 minutes is, a very mentally taxing, experience. But it's not just that. The biggest thing's probably having confidence in yourself. For me, say you have a good race, you get confident, but you have one bad race, your confidence can just plummet, eh? But knowing that it's not the end of the world, it's a long championship, those sorts of things help a lot. But I think the biggest thing that I learned when I first went over there was, it's going to sound quite selfish, but not caring about anyone else. The racing sport is such a cutthroat, I guess you could say, business, that really you have to focus just on yourself and solely on yourself. Off the track, you can be the nicest guy in the pits, be friends with everyone, but on the track, you almost have to be, you have no friends, because it's the same for any rider. You ask one of my competitors and they'd say the exact same thing, so it's really just about focusing on yourself and being as aggressive as possible on the track, because racing at that speeds, it's very difficult to find time. And in the races, I mean, I came in one race, my whole arm was black from just rubber, just touching other guys at those speeds. So to have the confidence first to do that is pretty astounding, yeah.
It probably tests your mother more, the mental side of it. I would have thought, going around at those sort of speeds. I mean, I suppose you can't really think about how fast you're going if you're going to be successful at that level. You've just got to go through it, I'd imagine.
Yeah, exactly right. It's people look at me funny when I say this, but when we're actually out on track, everything feels like in slow motion for us riders, and we call that a flow state.
Yep.
So it could literally be the same as, say, a darts player when he's about to take a shot at the dartboard, or a golf player when he's about to take a swing. Yeah, everything feels slow motion to you. That might sound crazy because obviously we're doing such crazy speeds, but you get in such a flow state that everything feels slow motion, everything feels very smooth. And funny enough, I had COVID in the start of 2022, and I came back from that, I think 2 weeks after I tested negative, and I still wasn't fully recovered mentally, and we call it COVID brain. And what ended up happening on the bike, everything felt so fast, and I just couldn't ride, very well, because obviously when everything's moving fast, you can't judge things better, It seems very fast going at 200k an hour when usually it feels like slow motion to me. So that probably was one of the harder things to come back from when I got COVID. And yeah, if you're not in that flow state, you just can't perform.
So talk us through the schedule. You're going to jump on a plane as we record this. By the time this one goes out via the Raw, you're going to be over or on the way anyway there next week. And tell us a little bit about the campaign, because there's a little bit of a difference year on year, isn't there? Because you're concentrating fully on that the junior GP.
Yeah, so at the time we're recording, this Sunday I'll be leaving to Spain. So we fly from Invercargill, Auckland to Dubai, and then Dubai to Barcelona. And then that weekend I'll probably still be jet lagged. I have to get back on a bike in Valencia for the first test of the season. So that's probably one of the most important parts of the year. That's trying out the new bike and stuff like that. And then we have another one closer to the first round. But the first round kicks off, I think, the 21st of April in Misano, Italy. So that's in San Marino. So that's a really nice track to go on. But yeah, we have 7 rounds for the season. Kicking off obviously in Misano and ending in November in Valencia. So 7 rounds over, April to November. It's nearly only one race a month. Yep. So it's a very long time to be over there just doing that much racing. Obviously the past seasons I've been doing 2 championships, so the Rebel Rookie Cup as well. So it's kept me quite busy, but the problem with that was, both championships have different requirements. So I think solely doing the Junior GP Championship will be great just for me to focus on single requirements, focus just on one bike, one track at a time, whereas before it kind of got very overwhelming, not just for me, but for the other guys doing the dual classing. Travelling, I think it was May, we had to go from Jerez in Spain, which is the bottom of Spain, to Portugal, back to Jerez, then to France, then to Valencia, then back home to Barcelona, and then Barcelona to Jerez, Jerez to Italy to, I think it was the Netherlands, and then literally the weekend after the Netherlands we had to go back to Portugal, all within, 2 weeks, I think a week.
Mate, I don't know how you recall all those stops, to be honest.
That's
That's
the thing.
outstanding.
Like a racer, being a racer, you remember every single race, You can. I could tell you a race about, 5 years ago. I remember exactly what happened, So, yeah.
What are you hoping to get out of this season?
Yeah, this season, obviously the goal would be to, fight for the championship in Junior GP, but necessarily my goal isn't that. It's to do whatever it takes to get a World Championship contract. So right now I'm racing in the Junior GP World Championship, so that's really the last step before moving up to the Senior World Championship. And Kiwis, I think we've only had maybe 2 or 3 Kiwis racing in the, Senior World Championship, but they were, 20, 30 years ago, so obviously it's evolved a lot since then. So in the modern era, I'd really want to be the first one. And that's really, close to happening. I mean, the problem is you have to be 18 to move up. Right now I'm 17, so I was too young to move up for the 24 season. But when I turn 18 in August, firstly I'll be eligible for wildcards to do, say, one-off races in that championship. And then hopefully I do well enough this year in Junior GP to secure a full-time contract for 25.
So how does that happen? That's purely performance based, or what is that's connections? I guess it's all of the above, really.
Yeah.
But how does that sort of seat open up for you?
Yeah, it's really all of the above. Obviously you have to perform. That's the key. Being 18 as well, being of age, that's also a key box to tick. Luckily, we haven't been able to do that in past seasons, but finally we're able to now. But yeah, it's really about if you have the correct connections. I think making sure you meet the right people, shaking a lot of hands, stuff like that. It's good, having Mum with me this year because she's really good at that. But yeah, meeting the right people, going out of your way to say hello, and yeah, just doing the best that you can. Finally, it's a bit of a pain because it's not one of those things that you've done enough until you get that, the ink on the contract to sign, So it's a difficult one, but the best I can do is just go out there and perform the best that I can. Yeah,
you talk it like. Talk about the prospects of a world championship. It's pretty incredible when you really delve into it. Not just for someone from Invercargill, but New Zealand, and literally it's pretty special. But this journey, you've obviously got the talent. You had the talent early. You work hard, very driven, but it takes even more than that, isn't it? The sacrifice for a lot of people and the support that you've got around the place to chase this dream and be knocking on the door. It's taken a fair bit of work, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. It certainly didn't happen all just like that. I guess I really have to go back to 2018 when I got my first road bike for I think it was my 11th birthday. And at that point, it was really just a dream. It wasn't, there wasn't really much in place to kind of make it happen. We were just having fun. But at that time in New Zealand, you had to be 13 to race bikes. So I was too young, so we had to move to Australia. So already then, my first race wasn't even in the country, which was an experience and a half. And I honestly speaking, I think that was better for me because I went straight into the deep end. I didn't have any, practice at, club level. It was straight into international racing, which I think probably shaped me good at the time into the rider I was. And then obviously 2020 COVID hit, so everything kind of got stalled that year. 2021 was my first year in Europe racing in the Rebel Rookie Cup. 2022 was my second year racing in that, and then also doing a few wildcards in the Junior GP Championship. So at that time, I didn't have a full-time contract. It was almost like I was riding for the future, as you kind of really always are, But luckily, and I think it was the second race, we got front row in the qualifying, I think third, which was unheard of, in your second ever race to get third in the qualifying session was pretty awesome. And also to get points further on in that race. That got me enough to get a full-time contract for the next year. So last year was my rookie year in that championship. And yeah, it exceeded my expectations considering it was only my second year racing in Europe. And yeah, we did, I think, 2 front rows. We finished 4th and 5th in 2 races. And the one I finished 4th, I was 300ths away from third, and then a further 2 away from second. And then first was another 10th up the road. So you're talking about milliseconds away from podiums. And then luckily enough, I did good enough that year as well, last year to get another full-time contract. But the hardest thing is just the expenses of it all. It's not cheap. It's, the price of contracts are, incredibly expensive. So it's a huge sacrifice, not just for me, but also the family. As well as you almost kind of have to sacrifice your childhood, I guess. That's one way that you have to put it. I'm not able to go out to parties. I'm not out to go, I guess, on the beers with the boys anymore. Well, at all. I never have. And yeah, but to be honest, I wouldn't change it for the world. I'm out there living my dream in Europe. So for me, that part is good. But then again, it's also very taxing on the family. Mum having to say goodbye to her 2 boys the last few years, and now Mum having to say goodbye to, Dad and my sister Mika. So it's certainly an experience for sure. But it's great to have a fantastic family behind me, and that's one part of it. Without them, I wouldn't be there. So yeah.
Who's going to do the spanner work if with Stacey staying at home?
Well, that's the thing. Mum can try, but I don't think we're going anywhere. But that's the thing. This year is going to be interesting. I've got a lot more responsibility, which I think is good. Turning 18, you're nearly an adult, so I think it'll be good for me to have that, extra responsibility. But for sure, if the car breaks down, we're probably stuffed.
Well, I suppose the Speedway fraternity might be disappointed if we don't mention that it was actually on the Speedway bike that you sort of first started out with.
Yeah, exactly right. Speedway, that was where it all kicked off for me. Already Park, spending days out there. It was that was where I really, learnt my craft. I think my first ever speedway race was the end of 2013, racing, peewees at the time. That's what they call it, peewees. And then it kind of, at that point, my goal and my dream was to be a speedway world champion. And we went to Australia in 2016, and we went to the Speedway World Championship to watch. Me and my friend Hayden Brooklyn, who's still racing speedway and doing great. We did that, and I said to Dad, "Wow, this is awesome. This is where I want to be. This is where I want to be." But the next day we were going to Phillip Island to watch MotoGP.
And then the world changed.
Oh, did it what? I saw that, and I was just like blown away. Like, we were walking across the overbridge across the track. Well, not even the fastest bikes were going through. I think it was Moto3, the bikes I'm on today. Yeah. And I fell over because just the vibration just, gave me such a fright. And at that point, I was just sold, It was such a shock to see bikes going so quickly around the track. And that's where it all changed for me. I said to Dad, I want a road bike for my birthday. I want a road bike for my birthday. And my 11th birthday, they made it happen. And, yeah, it's just been a great journey ever since.
It was a good investment from your parents, I think.
It was a good investment.
Yeah.
So we talk about where the aspirations were from an early point of view, but when did it actually land on you that this was a realistic path that you could take, and how did that come about?
I think the first time it really just dawned on me was probably when I got my first ever front row, that wild card in the second race in Europe. I remember literally that day I signed the contract, and then later on that day I got that for qualifying on the third, and it was at that point where I was like, holy crap, this could actually happen. Because
so really interesting. So you go to Europe,
yeah,
and obviously you had, you knew what you wanted to achieve,
yeah.
But it wasn't until you were over there and were at the sharp end of something from a qualifying point of view, you thought actually this could actually turn into something.
Exactly right. Like, when you go over there, it's incredibly intimidating.
Yeah.
Like, the first year, I remember when I first ever started riding road bikes in 2018, I was watching Red Bull Rookie Cup, and I was watching guys in there who I was actually with in 2021. So it's like, hang on a minute, I've seen you race, and now I'm racing against you. These are guys that I grew up watching, and you're actually racing against them and competing against them, and now actually beating them. It's like, it's such a weird feeling, So it's super intimidating. And I think the first year I raced in Red Bull Rookie Cup, 8 of those guys went into World Championship that next year. I mean, one of them is, close to being the world champion 2 of them were close to being world champion last year. And that Aragon qualifying where I qualified on the front row, I'm pretty sure there was, I think, 3 guys who are out-qualified who are racing world championship and have podiums. So at that point, it was like, I'm, actually just as quick as these guys who are, they're going to be world champions in the future. So at that point, I was like, I've got the goods, now I just need to keep nurturing it and keep working hard. And then also there was a lot of times where it didn't go to plan. Don't get me wrong, I've had my fair share of crashes and my fair share of low points. And those were the times where it was very difficult to keep motivated. I think last year I had a run of 3 crashes in a row in the race, one out of second place, one out of the front group, and then another one out of the front group. And it's like, you didn't feel like you did anything wrong, yep. And then you crash. So it was like very disheartening. And I said to Mum, like, this isn't good, people are saying just DNF, 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 beside my name. And that was when it was like, right, I just need to keep calm. I can't change it. I've crashed now. Just focus on the next race. And then again, the results started to go back up. And don't get me wrong, I had a lot of lows after that as well. But the main thing is that you just show your potential to the people, to the important people, like my team manager and Scary. He sees potential in me, which is, incredibly good from a racing perspective. To have good people believing in you is probably the key to it. And yeah, it's just about performing at that point, yeah.
Yeah, I think may have had this conversation with your mother quite a few times, and potentially with yourself as well. I reckon for you, mate, especially, one of the hard things, right, is that this stuff starts opening up for you at 15, 16 years of age. Now, you'll be able to tell us where's the sweet spot from an age point of view, experience-wise, will be, but that could be, 8, 10 years away for you as well too. So how you practice patience. I think that's the word I wrote down here and circled as well, because that must be the hard bit, right? You're in there, you're amongst it, you're at the sharp end of things, you know you're right there, you know if the cards fall and you get a good run, you know you're right there from a podium point of view, yet there's this long-term career out in front of you as well too. So how do you sort of keep both those things in context?
That's the thing. It's really difficult because this year in World Championship, there's guys in there that I've beaten and guys in there that I'm quicker than, but I'm not in World Championship, you know. That's it might sound a bit, you know, selfish and a bit rude, but you know, I should be in there, you know. And that's probably the hardest thing, the fact that you know you're quick enough, but you're not in there, you know. It's nothing's ever secured until you sign that contract. So it's that's one of the things I think this sport, no matter what age you are, you've always got pressure on you. And as I said, it's like when you sign a contract, as long as it's the correct contract, it's kind of like a sigh of relief. It's like, right, okay, I'm secure for at least the next year. But once your contract runs out, you've got to really be like, okay, I need to start looking around. I need to make sure I get another one, because it's kind of like it's really just you go contract to contract to contract to contract. It's not like, okay, I've signed a contract, I'm good for the next 10 years, you know, I'm good for the rest of my career. It's never like that. Don't get me wrong, there's people, you know, like in F1, Verstappen, he'll sign a contract for the next 5 years because, you know, he's safe in that team. And that's really only at the highest level that you will get that. Guys that are making millions and millions of dollars a year. At the junior level, where it's very fierce and everything's so close and very competitive, that's where it's very difficult to find a way to differentiate yourself from everyone else. I think being a Kiwi helps with that because it's a point of difference, but it's also very difficult coming from New Zealand because, you know, we've had not that many races in the World Championship, and it's also from a racing perspective, we're quite far behind. Whereas, you know, if you're Spanish, don't get me wrong, the expectation of being Spanish is very high because they're all super quick. But you've also got all the facilities you need to become a world champion, whereas in New Zealand we don't. So there's very difficult things a part of that,
Well, the other thing when you first went over there, I mean, those guys you were competing against, I mean, those tracks would have been there on their doorstep. And you've been flying around Tiratonga or whatever, and you've gone over there, and the first time I'm guessing you've seen some of these tracks is when you're competing at that level where these guys have been right. So you were on a little bit of a back foot for a start, I would imagine, because of that.
Yeah, exactly. It's like when they travel, they just go straight back home. My home is not, I'm not going home till the next 9 months. I've still got 9 months and you're home, you know. That's probably one of the hardest things, getting homesick. Okay, I have a house over there and I have a house that I always go to, but it's not home. It's not New Zealand, you know. If I could fly back and forth, I would. Obviously, it's super expensive, but yeah, as you said, every track I went to in that first year was new. And when I go to World Championship, we go to Asia, America, you know, we go to like Dubai, Qatar, all those places. So those tracks again will be new. Thankfully, the correct people understood that. They knew that, right, every track's new. You know, you can't really judge this kid on, you know, tracks he's never been to because he's got 2 practice sessions to get up to speed with the track, 2 30-minute practice sessions before he goes into qualifying. And he has 1 qualifying session, 1 25-minute qualifying session before the race. So it's like you only got 3 sessions to learn the track. Thankfully, the correct people, like the rider coaches, understood that. Whereas now, you know, these tracks, I know them like the back of my hand. I've done, you know, now 2 years on them. And also, as I said before, it's like I didn't put any effort in. I wasn't training nearly as hard as I should have back in the first year. Whereas now, you know, a month, like even now, I'm looking at the first round, even though it's a month and a bit away, just trying to study up. So even though those tracks aren't my home tracks, I treat them as if they're like Tiratonga, and I try to understand them like they're Tiratonga. Like, you know, Tiratonga, I could do laps blindfolded. I know the way around that track, you know, whereas the tracks in Europe, I don't. So I'm trying to get to that point where they're, you know, just subconsciously, you know, I know them. So, yeah.
It's good stuff, mate. Okay, let's do some rapid fire to wind things up. Let's talk. Let's go with first ever motorbike.
QR Honda 50.
When and how old?
When I was 4 years old. So I was born in 2006, so that's 2010 for my birthday, but I didn't ride it for a year because I was scared of the noise. So I rode it when I was 5.
I'm really pleased you've got over
that story before.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Okay. Biggest crash?
Biggest crash, I think Valencia last year. I had
Talk us through it.
yeah, pretty much. It was the second lap, and I was starting I had a really bad qualifying. I think I qualified 19th. The first race, I finished 7th, 19th to 7th, which was great.
It's a jungle back in the field there off the start line, mate.
Yeah,
okay.
It's really bad.
Yeah.
And the second race, I was like, right, I could do even better. If I get a good start, I can be in the podium. And I could have been. And I think I passed 10 people in the first 2 laps. But lap 2, 2 guys crashed in front of me, had nowhere to go. I went flying through the air, landed on my neck and my helmet, and then I got run over by another bike. So that was a lot of physio after that. I have pictures of my helmet, and it was not pretty, that's for sure, yeah. So I'd say that was probably my biggest one.
How big? I mean, safety-wise, it's obviously a massive part of the sport, as it has to be as well, too. You're from your point of view, like it obviously gets the job done, But so talk about the priority and what you have to go through in that regard.
Yeah, obviously your safety gear is paramount. Like, okay, it's a bit different because we have people that are like sponsored by certain brands and stuff, but like helmets and stuff, they have to test every single helmet and it has to be up to a certain level. Like they have to drop anvils on them and stuff like that, put pressure test on them to make sure they won't combust and stuff like that. Then we have airbags in our leather suits, so you look like, the Michelin man when you crash. Our boots, they won't be breaking anytime soon. Your gloves, you can't even cut them open sort of thing, because if you crash, you're sliding across a track or you're flying through the air, 5 metres in the air. So it's, safety is paramount for sure, yeah.
Favourite race?
Favourite race, I'd say Jerez, where I finished 4th.
Yep.
Less than half a tenth away from the podium. That one was really good because it was where I got my second front row and I was leading the race for quite a big margin of that. And it was the first race where I really showed everyone that I could do it. So, yeah.
What about favourite track, both in New Zealand and internationally? So two-pronged answer.
He's only got one choice in New Zealand.
Well, let's prejudge there, Logan.
The thing is, okay, Teretonga is a great track. I wouldn't say it's my favourite, though. That's the thing.
Yep.
I don't know, maybe it's just because I've done so many laps around there. I think my favourite would be in Taupo. That track is an incredible track, or Timaru. Those 2 tracks are my favourite levels in Timaru. But my favourite track in Europe would probably be Aragon in Spain, where I've gotten 2 of my 3 front row qualifyings. I don't know if
just the name sounds cool. I mean, it's Lord of the Rings.
It's incredible. It's such a beautiful track. That or Le Mans in France, obviously Le Mans, the 24-hour track.
Sure.
It wasn't so much the track that I enjoyed. It was more so the atmosphere. That was where we had the biggest MotoGP crowd, and it was 400,000 people. And I remember we're lining up on the grid, and I was looking out to the track. I was on the second row, so I was quite far up the grid, and I could literally not see an empty seat in the grandstands. All I could see was people, and we started up our bikes, and we couldn't even hear the bikes. All you could hear was people chanting and stuff. It was truly incredible. I think there was 400,000 at that event, which is pretty crazy.
So does the junior GP, does it follow the MotoGP circuit, or does it occasionally cross over? How does that work?
Sometimes we've had times where we've conjoined with MotoGP. Like I think 2022 was the last time we had that in Misano. Unfortunately, we only have one race, whereas in Rookies Cup, every race weekend is with MotoGP.
Gotcha.
So that was crucial because you're in the MotoGP paddock with them. So that was really nice. You're walking around and you see your idols,
Because I remember it was a Southland sportsperson of the year night, right? And you were junior sportsperson of the year.
Right.
We dialed in live to find you, actually, and somehow the technology worked, and here you are walking the paddock, and, you know, unbelievable, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly right. That was probably my favourite part about being a Rookies Cup. Of course, the racing and stuff, but you're right there where your dream is.
Yeah.
You're in the exact same place where it's all happening. And I think that was crucial for me to understand what needs to be done to a certain extent. And it was also really good motivating you because you know what you're in for if you go good. That's where you're headed. Whereas Junior GP, since it's a separate championship, it's a bit more difficult. Obviously, I think it's better in the aspect that you get more time to yourself. It's a bit more laid back because, you don't have MotoGP where, all the cameras are around and stuff like that. Whereas Junior GP, you can kind of just do your own thing. But, both championships are incredible, super high level, super professional. I mean, we're at the racetrack and we have semi-trucks for us to just chill in,
Good.
That's when you know you've made it. So,
I feel like a real bike rider there.
Exactly.
That's great. This is not actually that rapid as a rapid fire, but anyway, it's good stuff in here. I was going to ask your go-to post-race meal.
Go-to post-race meal. I think in Italy, an Italian pizza.
Yes.
It's the best. That's one thing I miss about not being in Europe, the Italian pizza.
Yeah. Have you had a chance to look around? Do much exploring, I mean? Yeah.
Well, in 2022, my whole family came over. My mum, dad, and my sister were all over there. So that's when we really got to explore. Whereas, me and dad were quite guilty of it. We kind of just want to get to the racetrack and just relax. But having mum over there, no matter what, I'm going to have to explore.
Yeah.
So, we've been to like Rome, we've seen the Colosseum, we've been to Venice. We went in, I think, the gondolas through the river, stuff like that. We've been to Pisa, we've been to the Eiffel Tower in France, Paris, all that sort of stuff. So, yeah, it's pretty cool. You get to explore a little bit. But, yeah, there's still a lot more places to be explored, which I'm sure I'll find out this year.
Have you got a bike rider that you look up to? Like someone, I guess, that's already made it?
I guess Marc Marquez. He's my idol. He's 8-time world champion. The last few years have been incredibly tough for him. I mean, he, had a near career-ending injury, and then he had to miss out his whole season because of it. Like, it ended his season, and then he came back the next season, and I think 2 races and he won. So it's like, that's pretty incredible, considering it's the highest level. Yeah. And he's just probably one of those one-in-a-lifetime talents for sure, yeah.
Righto, mate, you get to write the end of the story. What is it? Where's this thing going? Where do you want to take it?
Yeah, I think I have it as planned out as obviously nothing ever goes to plan, but if it were to go to plan, obviously this year, do really good in the Junior GP Championship, sign a contract for World Championship next year, race in Moto3 World Championship for a year or two, just get my profile up and, be at the point end in that championship, classify myself as one of the best riders in the world. And then the next step after that's moving up to the Moto2 Championship. So that's the next championship. And obviously race in that for another 1-2 years. And then grow my profile in that, be one of the front riders. And then that's where you only got one step left, and that's to go to MotoGP, which is the highest level of racing in the world. And from there, there's really no deadline of how long I spend in that. I'd spend my whole life in that championship if I could. But even then, getting to MotoGP is an end goal, is to be the first Kiwi world champion. And even if I were to win, say, Junior GP Championship or Moto3 or Moto2, that's great. It's one of the best things you can do. You're a world champion, and you're a Kiwi world champion, even better. But it's not the MotoGP World Championship. For me, that's my end goal. If I could, win the MotoGP World Championship the next day, if the world ended, I'd be satisfied, Yeah. Until then, I'm not satisfied. So the goal is to get a Kiwi back into the MotoGP paddock, which, that's what the goal is for this year.
How many starters?
I think there's around 30,
right, okay.
26 to 30, around that. Junior GP's 30. I think World Championship's 26.
Yep.
So that's 26 places on the grid.
In the world. So this is the cool thing about this conversation, right? I'd say about F1, or you talk about that, there's 20 seats in Formula One in the world. There's, 26 from a moto point of view as well, too. The mere fact, mate, that we're in this conversation today talking about it, and there's a potential path. Yeah. Long way to go, a lot of steps, that, but still it's pretty unfathomable, really.
Like even in the Red Bull Rookie Cup, to get selected into that, there's 24 of us. 24 of us. And firstly, you have to go to a selection event. So 100 people go to the selection event. 10 of those people get selected. But 100 people at the selection event, around 10,000 to 100,000 people apply to go to that selection event. Yeah. And then you whittle that down to 100, and then you whittle that down to 10 each year. And to be a part of that for 3 years, to be able to hold my spot for 3 years was, pretty astounding. So,
I think a lot of people that have followed your career know how remarkable this is, but there's probably a lot of people actually who just don't realise what you're actually doing and what the potential is, isn't it? So let's hope that more people jump on the bandwagon. Yeah, exactly.
You just have to watch one Moto3 race to understand just how crazy I am. Yes. I promise I'm not insane, but it might seem like that sometimes when you watch one of the races. I mean, as I said, you're doing 250k an hour, millimeters away from each other. You've got 20 guys within a second of each other. You count 1 second, and you got 20 bikes just whiz past you.
And mate, you're
cool.
out in it.
Exactly.
It's not as if you're inside a vehicle
Exactly.
of any description. I mean, you're out in it.
Exactly
as you
right.
say, rubbing up against rubber.
Yeah, exactly. Like that was the thing. It was like the first year I wasn't inside that 20, whereas now I'm in that top 10, top 5 part of that 20. So the goal is to be the first one of that 20. Yeah.
Thank God you're not my kid. My God, I don't know how you do it.
It was funny actually in Auckland at the New Zealand Superbike Championship final round. It was the first time really that I went out and watched the main class, the Superbikes, and it was a massive title battle between Mitch Rees and Anthony West. And I wanted Mitch to win. Me and him were best mates. We were great friends. He was about to win his third New Zealand title. And the close racing, I felt like a mum, like I couldn't watch. I was just shaking.
See?
I went up to Mitch's mum. I'm like, I don't know how you do this.
That's right.
And she was like, well, now you know how your mother feels. So
That's good. Well, mind you, we're sounding like parents here. We better end this. Hey, good stuff, mate. Listen, great insights. It's an awesome story, like we say, and to get a bit of an idea in terms of how it's gone and potentially where it's going is just fantastic, mate. So travel well. You know that you've got certainly the both of us and no doubt all of Southland's backing as well, mate.
Absolutely.
Go well for the year ahead.
no, thank you guys for having me. Cheers, guys.
He's an impressive young man, certainly no doubt about that. Cormac Buchanan, and obviously, as we said, we wish him well for the season ahead. Good way to start, yeah?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Well, we talked about launching this podcast, we thought we'd look for someone with a bit of a bang, and I think Cormac's, in terms of Southland sporting talents at the moment, obviously right up there.
Yeah, definitely. That's 5 months of prep. That's
Yes.
what you get when you prep for 5 months.
So
we'll
be back in 5 months' time with edition number 2. No, so our plan is to go out every Wednesday, courtesy of the Southland Tribune. So that's where you'll get it first, and then later on via where you find all of your podcasts across Spotify, Apple Podcasts, etc., as we go as well too. So I think we've got the first one in the bag. It almost came across there as we had a plan. Actually, I think we've almost got away with that.
Yeah, all of those pre-meetings has come off.
What Sav means is the 2 minutes before we hit record, we went, right, what are we going to chat about? Bang, off we go. Good stuff, lads. Appreciate it. Looking forward to it. Let's tell some good sporting stories, eh?
Yeah, awesome.
Absolutely.
We will catch you back with next week's Raw every Wednesday with the Southland Tribune. Thanks.